I have one question for you.
You like memes?
What better way to show your love for said memes with the ultimate meme off meta setup? And all jokes aside, today we're going to take a look at what is probably the most underutilized, interesting, quirky, and bizarre ammo type for a shotgun that we've probably ever had in Call of Duty, and that is frag rounds on the Jak-12. If you didn't know, frag rounds are basically slug rounds, but they explode. Pretty cool in itself, right? I remember when these things were first introduced, people were thinking, oh my god, that sounds so broken, and oh my god, please nerf this before it's even released. But once they came out, everyone just said, oh. And then that was it. The hype for it died, and then the frag rounds basically vanished into the nether, never to be seen in the limelight again, until today. So what we're gonna do is check these bad boys out, see how they work, the damage, something weird that I've never actually seen before with any gun in Warzone, and most importantly, we're gonna make some Rose Sweat's heads explode. First, let's take a look at what we get with the ammo itself. Frag rounds are projectiles that increase your damage ranges and add explosive damage or splash damage, but are inaccurate like traditional slugs. You only get 8 shots and you lose some of your rate of fire. So a few things to dissect here. First off, the noticeable one is the rate of fire. With frag rounds, you lose a pretty noticeable bit of your rate of fire, and it takes your RPM of around 300 rounds per minute to about 245-ish rounds per minute. This is a pretty noticeable change, and you feel it pretty much immediately. This will then affect your time to kill theoretically, which you'll see is not going to be that great for these things. Next, let's talk about damage and range and all that, because things get kind of weird, and honestly, something happens here with frag rounds that I've never really seen before, so just bear with me for a second. The frag rounds seem to have about 3 different damage ranges. The max damage range is about 11.5 meters, and in this range, chest and headshots deal 100 damage, stomach does 100 as well, and legs do about 64, while arms do about 93. What this means is that you can kill a fully armored player in about 3 shots, and it will never be less than 3 with frag rounds. With a rate of fire of around 245 rounds per minute, this puts your theoretical time to kill at about 490 milliseconds, which compared to the regular Jak-12 and slug rounds, this falls really short. But as always, time to kill is not everything, so let's move on. In the next damage range, things start to get weird. Stomach shots now do slightly less damage at about 99, legs do about 55, and arms do about 82. What's weird here though is that head and chest shots now do more damage, it seems like. So it seems like it does roughly 103 points of damage as opposed to the normal 100, which, okay, that's not really that much more. But in the next range, the damage values for everything else stay the same, but headshots and chest shots will go up again and deal roughly 121 points of damage. For whatever reason, the further you are, the more damage you do with frag rounds, but only to the chest and head area. I have no idea why, or if this is unintentional or what, and as far as I know, this is the first time I've ever seen something like that in this game. If this is how that other gun that uses explosive rounds works, I think it's the Rytech Sniper, please let me know down below in the comments. I did this many times to check and see if I was doing something wrong, but as far as I can tell, that's just the way it is, and for some reason, it just works. Now, it could be an error in my testing, but I tried it so many different ways and I kept getting the same results. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here, but as far as I can tell, headshots will deal more damage past 23 meters. That seems to be the last damage range, and sadly, the boost to damage, though, doesn't really do much to time to kill against a fully armored player. It's still going to take 3 shots. The nice thing, though, is that if the enemy is wounded any slight bit, there's a huge chance that just 2 chest shots could kill them. That's pretty cool, but hey, normal slugs are still the winner here in my book, which if you haven't seen me cover slugs on the Jak-12, you best go watch now, you won't regret it. So, pretty quirky stuff here that we're talking about, but now let's look at muzzle velocity. As you know, this is one of the problems with normal slugs, and it's worse on frag rounds. Normally at 100 meters, which is probably further out than you'll ever want to be with these sort of things, slugs take 21 frames to hit the target, or about 350 milliseconds. The Marauder Suppressor, as you know, boosts the muzzle velocity and makes it take about 15 frames or 250 milliseconds. For reference, the base XM4AR can hit a target at that range in about 7 frames or 117 milliseconds. Now, frag rounds take 25 frames or 417 milliseconds at this range, and the Marauder takes that up to about 18 frames or 300 milliseconds. So it's very slow, and if you're in a small to medium-sized room, just try and shoot at the wall, and you'll notice there's like just a slight delay from when it hits the wall, even though you're in a pretty relatively small room. It's kind of weird, but the Marauder also does give you more range overall, so I definitely recommend using it. Well, I guess technically you'd want less damage range because you do more chest and headshot damage, so you'd want to get that 121 damage closer. I don't know, whatever. You get my drift. The Marauder is still amazing. The muzzle velocity boost and the bullet drop help that it gives you is just too nice to give up. So now with frag rounds, one nice perk you get is splash damage. The splash damage itself is very minimal and extends to about a meter or so away from the enemy. If you hit at the very end of that meter, you deal pretty poor damage overall, like less than 20 points of health or something. I didn't even measure it accurately because it's just so small it doesn't matter. But if you hit relatively closer, the splash damage does about 25 points of damage to armor plates, so it would take roughly 6 shots to destroy 3 full plates of armor. Yeah, that's not very good, especially considering you only have 8 shots. If you hit someone without armor, just their bare bones health, it's going to take you about 7 shots with the splash damage to kill someone who has EOD equipped. Otherwise, if they don't have EOD and you're hitting their bare bones health, it's going to take you about 4 shots of that splash damage to kill someone, and that's with no armor and no EOD. But since most people use EOD and they usually have armor, splash damage is just kind of bad. But it does have one useful trick to it, and that's pressure and suppression power. Now imagine sitting in the tower of the fire station in Warzone, minding your own business, and then you start getting bombarded by a team of people using these frag rounds, and there's explosions going off. It's insane and crazy, and you take some splash damage here and there. It can be kind of nice to mentally mess with your enemies, which in that sense is pretty handy. You don't really know what's going on, or you may know someone has frag rounds and is shooting at you, but at the same time, you have this intrinsic desire to just get the f out of there and run. It's just this weird thing, it kind of messes with your opponents psychologically. So splash damage, I think, is kind of hilarious and has some very limited use, despite its weaknesses. As far as any perks to use with it, shrapnel does seem to make your health take a little bit longer to rejuvenate when you hit someone with it who has no armor, of course, and the same for the 2 weapon perks, frangible wounding and disabling, which disabling doesn't work with splash damage, so in order to get that stun effect and hurt their sprint speed, it has to be a direct hit, and it has to be on someone with no armor. It works only on people with no armor. Keep in mind also with frag rounds and slugs, you have that weird spread that happens, and sometimes the projectile veers off where you were aiming and it just misses, so be prepared for annoyances with that. Overall, this thing is actually pretty fun. With the ability to make people panic and still 3-shot somewhat decently, it gives you some pretty hilarious moments of just blasting people's heads and limbs off. Is it competitive and meta? Absolutely not. Is it usable? Kind of, but more than anything, it's quirky and it's fun, and it's just such a nice change of pace. This is the same level of fun as the Gallo with the combat stock before it got nerfed. It has that just level of insanity and funness to it that's just really, you can't miss out on that. I recommend it only for that fact alone. Don't go in prepared to dominate and lead the lobby, but instead, you're going to weird people out, you're going to troll people, and it's going to be so strange for the enemies as you spam 8 explosive slugs in their face, only for them to survive and then wonder what the hell is going on. It's so loud too, you have to be mindful of where you shoot because, I mean, they're explosions for Christ's sake, so you're gonna hear them. And last, if you want a little class setup to use this thing and try it out for yourself, it's basically just this. It's like the slug class that I have, but instead of slugs, obviously, you're gonna use frag rounds. I use something to help control the recoil just a little bit, but one attachment's probably all you need, so I use the Merc foregrip. And that is just about gonna do it for this video, guys. So if you enjoyed this look at frag rounds, please let me know in the comments below. Leave a like, as that's always appreciated here. And let me know, what do you guys think of frag rounds? Do you think they're kind of trashed here? Do you think they're kind of underrated? Have you used them before? And with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next shotgun video.